We need to jump back to early 2000s Jacksonville, Florida.
Yes, the origin point.
Right. We're looking at a high schooler named Josh, who eventually goes by Brentt Medina, and his friend Brandon Simmons. And if you want to understand the origins of this massive music empire, you can't look at like a multi-million-dollar recording studio or some viral social media moment.
No, done it wrong.
You actually have to look at brooms, mops, and a highly specific economic constraint.
The sheer mechanics of forced proximity are, like, at the absolute core of this origin story.
It's so fascinating.
It is, because Brent and Brandon were attending a private church-affiliated school in Jacksonville. And, private tuition is a huge financial barrier.
Definitely.
So to offset that cost, to actually just afford to be in those classrooms, these two teenagers were placed on a very specific work-study arrangement.
Friday arrangement, right.
Yes. The school actually did not hold academic classes on Fridays. However, Brent and Brandon were required to be on the physical grounds, just the two of them performing maintenance.
Just the two of them in the whole school.
Right. They were doing odd jobs, sweeping the hallways and just cleaning up the church and school facilities all day.
So I want you to really think about the psychology of that for a second. You are a teenager. It's Friday.
The best day of the week for a kid.
Exactly. Every other kid in your school is sleeping in, they're hanging out at the mall, doing whatever teenagers in the early 2000s did. But you are stuck pushing a broom through an empty, echoing building with exactly one other person.
It's basically a form of isolation.
Yeah, it is. But instead of just complaining or quietly resenting the labor, they kind of weaponized the boredom.
Yeah, absolutely did.
They were both learning to play guitar at the time. So what happens when you put two kids who are obsessed with learning music into an empty, reverberating hallway for 8 hours a day?
Well, they start talking about bands.
Right.
They start showing each other chord progressions they figured out, the night before. They start testing out vocal harmonies.
Just to hear how they bounce off the cinder block walls of the school, it's like natural reverb.
Yeah, they essentially turned a mandatory, physically taxing custodial shift into a creative incubator. I mean, in sociology, there's a concept of bonding through shared constraint. You see it in military units, or you see in early-stage startup founders.
Oh, like when people go through something tough together.
Exactly. When you remove external stimuli and enforce a shared hardship, even a mild one like sweeping floors, humans inevitably build a shared language to cope with the vacuum.
It's a survival tactic.
It is. So by placing these two specific teenagers in an empty building every Friday, the school administration unknowingly created the perfect pressure cooker for a creative partnership. They weren't just passing the time.
They were developing an entire sonic vocabulary.
Precisely.
And they ended up calling themselves the Josh and Brandon Show, and occasionally Pop Rocks and Soda, which is such a 2000s name.
Very of the era, yeah.
Right. And they started writing actual original acoustic songs. But, writing songs in an empty church hallway is one thing.
Right, keeping them in your head.
Yeah, but getting them out of your head and into the world is another. Which brings us to the inciting incident.
The pivot point.
The random microscopic pivot point that just completely fractures the timeline.
So walk us through that day.
Okay, so it's roughly 2002. Brent is living in an apartment with his nanny, which is his grandmother, the woman who primarily raised him.
Okay.
It's just a standard afternoon. Brent is in his bedroom with Brandon and his cousin, Brittany Jewel. They have their acoustic guitars out, and they are practicing this incredibly earnest, soft rock acoustic love ballad they wrote called The Pouring Rain.
A classic teenage acoustic ballad.
Right, exactly. And while they're in that cramped bedroom, just trying to lock in the harmonies, Brent's Uncle Charles happens to stop by the apartment to visit the nanny.
And this right here is the critical note. I mean, Uncle Charles is a member of their church community. He's simply walking through the apartment, maybe on his way to the kitchen, and he hears the music bleeding out from behind Brent's bedroom door.
He just catches it through the door.
Yeah. He stops, he listens, and he is genuinely deeply impressed by the arrangement.
Which is nice, but it could have just ended there.
Right, but here is where the trajectory of a life is altered. Charles does not just open the door, say, sounds great, kids, and walk away.
Yeah.
He actually takes immediate structural action.
Because he happens to have a very specific connection.
Yes.
Charles has a gym buddy named Eric Miley. Now, Eric isn't part of their church circle, but he had recently recorded a patriotic gospel song for Charles in the immediate aftermath of 9/11.
Right.
But the most important detail here isn't the gospel song at all. It's the fact that Eric Miley owns a legitimate home recording studio.
And we really have to clearly define what a home recording studio meant in the year 2002.
Oh, yeah, it was a totally different world.
Completely different. Today, a teenager can download a digital audio workstation, a DAW, onto a refurbished laptop, plug in a $50 USB microphone, and literally produce a globally distributed track from their mattress.
The infrastructure is entirely democratized.
Exactly. But in 2002, the analog economy was still dominant. To get a clean recording, you needed outboard gear. You needed hardware compressors, physical mixing consoles, actual soundproof rooms.
Stuff that costs thousands and thousands of dollars.
Tens of thousands. The financial and logistical barrier to entry for a teenager in Jacksonville was just insurmountable.
I want to pause on that because it's such an important distinction. It's like giving a kid who loves sketching with a normal pencil a sudden, unrestricted key to a high-end architectural drafting suite.
That's a great way to put it.
So Uncle Charles calls up Eric Miley, negotiates a heavily discounted rate for his nephew, and boom! Brent Medina is walking into his very first official recording session.
The very first one.
Yeah. They track the pouring rain. They even go so far as to mix in actual sound effects of rainfall into the analog mix.
Which is such a nice touch.
Right. And then they go on to track a few more songs, like Forgot and A Natural Thing.
So Uncle Charles essentially provided capital access.
Yeah, he did.
He bridged the gap between a private acoustic hobby and a tangible archived asset. And, the staggering part of this is just the sheer blindness of the catalyst.
Yes, that's exactly it. When Uncle Charles opened that door, he thought he was just doing a nice, supportive favor for his teenage nephew.
He had no idea.
None. He thought he was helping capture a cute love song before the kids grew up and got real jobs or whatever. He had absolutely zero comprehension that he was setting a 24-year machine in motion.
Right.
He didn't know he was effectively funding the prototype for an entire independent record label.
Because that specific session with Eric Miley, it proved something vital to Brent's psychology.
What do you mean?
Well, it proved that his internal emotional reality could be externalized, documented, and made permanent.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, once you realize that your feelings don't just have to dissipate into the air of your bedroom. Once you realize they can be captured on tape, mixed and preserved, it fundamentally changes how you process the world.
But realizing your emotions can be recorded is one thing. Actually building an infrastructure to survive them, to scale your grief and your trauma across decades. I mean, how on earth does a teenager with an acoustic guitar figure that out?
It's a huge leap.
It is severe. If we look at the trajectory outlined in these internal dossiers, the music just explodes outward into this sprawling multi-genre ecosystem. We enter the Calumet Circle era in the late 2000s. Brent teams up with his sister, Brandi, and we are no longer in the territory of soft rock acoustic love ballads with rainfall sound effects.
Not at all.
This is raw, heavy, alternative rock.
The archive actually refers to the Calumet Circle era as the survival through sound method.
Survival through sound?
Yes. Mechanically, they are utilizing dual vocal harmonies,
Whoa.
a brother and sister singing together, but not to create a catchy pop hook.
Right.
They're doing it to actively process the severe trauma of a broken home and intense familial addiction. You can actually see it in the sheer aggression of the titles. I mean, their first album is literally named We Just Want the Cure, not the disease.
Man, that's heavy.
It is. The music becomes a localized defense mechanism.
Wait, let's look at the mechanics of that. When you say the music is a defense mechanism, what does that actually look like in the studio?
Well, it looks like using volume and distortion as a physical shield.
Oh, okay.
In an alternative rock format, you are relying on heavily overdriven guitars, crashing cymbals, and these strained full chest vocals.
Like really pushing your voice to the limit.
Exactly. When you are processing the chaos of addiction in your immediate family, a quiet acoustic guitar just doesn't match the internal frequency of your anxiety.
That makes total sense.
You need loud, dense, abrasive frequencies to sort of drown out the reality of what's happening in your living room. The studio becomes the only environment where they have total control over the chaos.
But the wild part of this 24-year catalog is that as the trauma shifts, the genre shifts completely to accommodate it. It's incredibly fluid.
Right. It doesn't stay static.
No. Because after Calumet Circle, the dossiers detail the emergence of a project called Dementia. This is a collaboration with Brent's brother, Adrian, who goes by Yo Drello. And they completely abandon analog rock.
Completely.
They dive headfirst into Ableton. It's entirely digital, hip-hop, and electronic production. And they are using this specific digital format to process the heavy, slow-moving grief of their grandmother's declining health. Hence the name of the project, Dementia.
The shift from analog rock to Ableton-driven digital production is just highly significant.
Why is that?
Because with a digital audio workstation like Ableton, you aren't just capturing a live performance in a room anymore, you are actually micro-editing reality.
Oh, wow.
You are chopping up samples, looping them, manipulating the pitch, stretching time.
Right.
And when you are dealing with a loved one suffering from dementia, which is a disease that literally distorts time, loops memories, and fragments reality,
Yes.
using a digital sampler to chop and loop audio is a profound, almost subconscious reflection of the disease itself.
That is just heavy. You're manipulating time on a screen because you can't stop time from degrading the person you love.
Exactly. It's a way to regain some control over a totally uncontrollable situation.
And then it pivots again. I mean, we see the creation of Sago Palms with collaborators Nate Sam and Paul Mack.
Yes, another totally different sound.
Right. Suddenly they are producing this atmospheric garage rock commentary on the anxieties of the modern digital age. The whole fog of war and how smartphones are ruining our connection to reality.
Very different themes.
Very different. And then, as if the catalog couldn't get any wider, the entire hub pivots into urban street rap with artists like Jimmy Blanco and Hitch producing these gritty, high-octane Texas and Florida hip-hop anthems.
It definitely appears dizzying on the surface, scattershot of genres. But the internal logic is actually flawless because it is all being managed by the exact same centralized processor.
Right.
Over this 24-year period, Brent Medina evolves from a reactive teenager into a highly strategic entity the documents refer to as the catalog architect.
The catalog architect.
Yes, and he forms Outsounding Entertainment to house every single one of these eras under one umbrella.
But how does one guy manage that kind of whiplash? I mean, going from processing family trauma with your sister to producing Florida street rap anthems, it seems like it would just fall apart into noise.
And that is exactly why Outsounding Entertainment adopted their core ethos, which is no noise, just pressure.